one of the accomplishments that you've been a part of is truly pizza. I would love to take us there if we can.
Okay.
The blisterings. Tell us more about how that affects flavor, because I can see texture for sure.
Well, did you go to Wiley Dufresne's seminar
Yeah.
where he talked about flavor? Well, he's a brilliant molecular gastronomist who turned his talents to pizza in the last few years. And he broke down how we experience deliciousness. So beyond flavor, deliciousness is experienced through texture, through sight, through fragrance. How do you work on all of those things and bring them into harmony so that the sum becomes more than all of its parts, right?
Synergy.
Yeah, so I think Truly was conceived with that idea, you know, and that pizza that you're talking about that's become the signature of Truly, that's become a very identifiable type of pizza, was conceived with the idea that it had to sound good, it had to look beautiful, it had to feel right in your mouth, and by feel right I mean not just crispiness, which a cracker is crispy, but it's not as satisfying as biting into a beautiful pizza, right? So the contrasts were considered. Contrasts in the appearance, different colors, different textures, different, what some people would call irregularities that are really contributing to the entire overall impact. You know, I heard somebody describe it as brain feels, you know, where you have like, when you experience something really great and you have these little brain feelings, you know, like somebody's tickling the top of your head. You want to bring that out in the pizza, and it's something that's actually, scientists can measure it. And one of the things that people respond to is those textural components, those little crackles combined with the cloud-like interior. The two things together, your brain registers them as being part of deliciousness.
Satisfaction.
Yeah, so, and,
Wow.
and even the sound, the auditory part of it, you know. When you're conceiving your pizza, are you thinking about it in terms of sound? I am.
Me too.
You know, I'm listening when the pizza's being, if I'm at the pizza board, I'm listening to the sound of the pizzas being cut to tell me what the conditions of my oven are. When you're making dough, you're listening to the sounds of the dough mixing in the bowl to give you a cue as to when it's ready or not. So the things that we identify as being a truly pizza, some of them are visual, some of them are fragrant, some of them are textural, some of them, of course, are taste, contrast, all of those things. They all come into play. And you have the ability to control them to a certain extent if you're mindful of them. So the days of creating a pizza by going in and sweeping the kitchen of whatever's laying around and dumping it on a pizza are over. Now we're talking about different zones of temperature and things like that nobody was thinking about 20 years ago. That when somebody bites into this pizza, I want them to experience something hot, something lukewarm, something cool. All of those combinations are devices to increase the enjoyment that the customer gets from eating that pizza. So it's not just about, oh look, I got micro-blistering. It's what is the micro-blistering bringing to the party? Also, how does the person feel after they ate the pizza? If you've been to Truly and you eat that pizza, you know that you feel better after you eat it. And we've all been to places where we eat a slice of pizza and as you're eating it, it tastes really good, but by the time you get to the end of the first slice, you never want to eat pizza again, right? Because it's sitting like a rock in your stomach. I'm not going to name some of the types of pizza that do that to me, but you know that they're out there.
It seems like there are a million things you are looking for. Maybe that's an overstatement, but maybe not. But how was that research and development it looked like, you know, when you got with a team and said, this is what we want, were there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words or goals that sort of shaped your attempts?
There were, but there was something that we said to each other before that.
Okay.
When Mike and I and Chris, several years ago, first went into what we call our lab, which is my commissary kitchen on the northwest side of Las Vegas. We went in there, and the very first thing we said is, no matter how great it is, we're going to be committed to saying it's never great enough. That we can always be better and better and better and better. One step at a time. We can do something really special if we're never completely satisfied. So let's not rest on our laurels. So we started with certain things that we wanted. We wanted digestibility, especially because that was very important to our partner Donna, who I would really want to talk about later on, the opportunity that she gave us. We wanted that digestibility. We wanted it to be beautiful. We wanted it to taste good. We wanted it to sound good. We wanted it to smell good. We wanted it to feel good. Those are the things that were in our minds from the get-go. So at every step it was, how do we make it smell better? How do we make it feel better? How do we make it taste better? How do we make it look better? This is good, but let's push it a little more. Sometimes we pushed it too far and we had to dial back.
Like, what does that mean?
I mean, we would try something, primarily in the area of starting with the dough. We would try something and we would recognize that a certain technique or a certain condition led to something that we liked. And we'd say, well, let's do a little more of that and see where that goes. Let's increase that, whether it's hydration or use of a pre-ferment or any of the things that we were doing, or extending out the cold fermentation, doing stretch and folds, all of those things. Sometimes we would do too much and we'd say, well, that had a negative impact on what we were doing. Now let's dial it back. And we did that with everything, whether it was selecting tomatoes, cheese, toppings, everything. We would keep pushing, and then we'd say, okay, when we got it to that point, if we go any further with this, it's going to negate from the overall product. And then there's also the consideration of how do all these things work together, how do they play together, which you also have to take into account.
That I'm trying to figure out how I can, that seems very, 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 very time intensive, hard. It needs to be systematic. You need to have commitment. I'm sure it helped also with a team of 3 people bringing all of their experience together.
And a unique set of talents too.
Yes.
From each contributor. And also having a partner in Donna who was not part of the direct process of creating, but was a sounding board for, are we going in the right direction?
Would you share? How did her role look like in that testing period? Was it come on over every Friday, try it out?
It wasn't every Friday. It was more like every couple of months. Okay, here's what we've got. And her taking her own notes and comparing that to not only to what her vision was, but also comparing it to what we had done prior. Because she was a little detached from the process. Because let's face it, we all love to get high on our own fumes. If we did it, we're emotionally invested in, oh, now I tried this, now I tried that. And we fall in love with the process because we're dough nerds or we're pizza nerds in general. And she would come back and say, well, as a consumer, this doesn't work for me because of this reason. Because the mouthfeel, or because it's challenging to eat it, or whatever, or just doesn't have the visual appeal that the last ones had.
How integral.
Let's go back. Pardon me?
I said how integral.
Yeah, it takes that objective sounding board too. Also, Donna is quite, I'm going to say demanding, but I mean it in the most positive possible way. She wants it to be great. But the flip side of that, which makes the whole thing work, is that she's also was willing to give us the resources we needed to make it great. How often do you get an investor in the pizza world that just says, no matter what it takes, let's make this great? The only thing we're going to consider is does it make it better? Is this the best that we can possibly be? That's like a unicorn investor. And she's stuck by that. Her and her husband Steve have stuck by that for the years that it took to develop, and now the 2 years that we've been in operation, never saying, well, no, we shouldn't do that because it's not a good business move. Because their vision is whatever makes the best possible experience is ultimately the best business move. That doesn't happen very often.
What a great serendipitous moment for Donna to be, at the time of connecting with you, both a past employee, someone who was successful and had the funds and resources to bring the three of you together.
And also had the demand for excellence.
Yes.
She was coming from the casino world at a very, very high level, at a level, of luxury hotels and luxury properties that saw the value in doing things in the best possible way that it could be done to create the best customer experience. So that was her vantage point. How would the Bellagio do it? How would the Wynn Hotel do it if a high roller was walking in? Well, let's treat every customer like a high roller. Let's give them the best linen, the best silverware, the best plates, the best environment. I mean, when you go to Truly, the environment knocks you out, right? It's such a beautiful place. You walk in there and you say, like, I want to sit here forever, which can be a problem because we have to turn tables.
Yeah.
But that's what you feel.
Yeah.
And that came out of discussion with Donna and I about, we want this place to feel like you're sitting in an outdoor pizzeria on the beach in Sorrento. And then Donna going to her designers and saying it's got to feel like you're outside in Sorrento. That's where the lemon trees come from.
And how lucky for Donna to find you and the team who are open to that vision and demand, because I actually just heard in this trip that something similar happened when they hired someone who brought that type of experience and background, but had basically just, it didn't line up with their vision and they had to separate ways.
Well, I think, in our case too, I mean, I've had a friendship with Donna for over 40 years. Donna worked for me when she was a junior in high school. And as she grew up, she continued to keep her fingers on the pulse of what was happening in our world. She supported, she came to Pizza Expo before she was in the pizza business. She came to LA Pizza Festival when I was there. She came to different film events that I took part in California. She followed the pizza scene closely. She knew Giulio. She had met Tony. So she had met Rob DiNapoli. We had gone on pizza crawl with Rob DiNapoli. So she wasn't a stranger to our world when she walked into it. She was aware of what she was getting into, and she was willing to support it in that way, which is very unique. So you take a guy like Chris or a guy like Mike, who are truly artists, and then you become like the Medici's were to Michelangelo. You say, okay, what do you need to make the statue of David? And you give them the tools and the materials that they need. You end up with a masterpiece, and that's what you created.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a really long time horizon for that too.
Yeah, you work it. It's like when people ask me, how long does it take you to make that pizza? 57 years.
I like that answer.
It's not at your door in 30 minutes or less. It took 57 years.
It's like the plumber who charges, what they're worth because they bring their experience and knowledge and can do it in a second.
Of course.
Wow. When I imagine people ask you a lot, like, what's the recipe? And I'm sure, I'm not sure. Is that frustrating when you hear that?
When people, it's it presents a challenge for a number of reasons. The first one is the recipe doesn't just belong to me, it belongs to everybody that developed it, and they may have different feelings about whose hands you place it in and what the monetary value is, which we're in the pizza business, and business is part of the title. But it's also a challenge to me because I think of it in another way. I got so much out of doing that research every day and working on it every day. And I had so much personal growth from that endeavor that if I were to just give you an instruction book and a recipe, I would be robbing you of the value that you get out of having that experience yourself. It was so valuable, so much of a learning experience for me to be on that journey, to be on that path. You know, it would be the equivalent, you know, I can tell you what you're going to experience when you go to Rome. But if you don't actually go to Rome yourself, you're never going to get the full effect, right? It's the same thing with, I could teach you to get micro-blisters on a pizza pretty easily, but I'd be robbing you of the experience of finding the path yourself. You know, so I think a good teacher, you know, if you think of it in Japanese martial arts terms, which is what I do with almost everything in my life, a sensei is somebody that has been there before, but they don't walk the path for you. They can tell you as you're walking the path yourself where some of the little stumbling blocks and the obstacles might be and help you to find your way around them. But if they did it for you, it wouldn't be yours, would it?
Wow. So cool. As someone who wanted all the shortcuts in life and wanted to avoid failure and, you know, making realization of that just within the last year, really, to be more welcoming to the journey, the lessons, all of that. It's hitting home at such the right time, the perfect time, because I feel like maybe if you told me that a year or two ago, I would have just been like, shut up, John, just give me the freaking recipe.
Give me the recipe, just tell me how to do it, right? But you would have missed out on that. Everything that you've experienced through that journey, I would have been cheating you if I did that.
You would have been. I would have been cheating myself by accepting it. Huh.
You know, and I know that there's going to be hundreds of people listening to this that say, that's a bunch of bullshit, he just doesn't want to give you the recipe.
The recipe in the description below. Just kidding.
Yeah. But if I gave you the recipe in the description, you'd never be able to get the same result.
I believe that.
And you would think that it was because I didn't give you the real recipe and the real description, and that wouldn't be true. It would really be because you didn't experience it, you didn't live it, you didn't feel it, you didn't make it part of yourself. You can read Tony Gemignani's book, go to all the seminars. It will be helpful, but you won't be Tony Gemignani because you won't have lived Tony Gemignani's life. And ultimately, do you want to be Tony or do you want to be the best version of you?
That was my conversation with John Arena, the greatest pizza maker of all time. If you want to check out the full episode, it's out now, linked in the description below. Thank you to Baccio Cheese for making this episode possible. Request a free sample using my link in the show notes. And finally, make sure to follow the John Arena Foundation. They're doing an event in San Francisco. I'll be there. I hope to see you too. Until next time, peace.